Greetings to everyone. Hope you are all doing well, and so looking forward to a set of instructions from Master Gampopa's Precious Garland to the Supreme Path. And as always, please listen with the proper mind and motivation. And today's topic, today's lesson is known as 10 unnecessary things, 10 needless things, or 10 unnecessary things, 10 things that you would not need. Okay, so the first lesson of the 10 needful things, 10 unnecessary things, so it is not something totally unnecessary, but what the instruction tells us is that if you reach a certain stage of practice, if you have you realize certain things, if you achieve certain things, if you reach certain levels, then such and such things are unnecessary. Otherwise, so this also tells us directly it tells us that we do not need such and such things if we reach certain levels, but indirectly it also tells us that if we have not reached certain level, or until we gain such realizations, we would need all of these things. So these are unnecessary things only once you reach a certain stage or a certain level. So these will be the 10 unnecessary things that we will be covering today. So the first realization, the first thing that we need, or we do not, first thing that we do not need. So to become for something to become unnecessary, for something to become needless, it should have been needful at a certain point of time, at a certain given moment. So in the beginning, the listening to the teachings. So the first instruction is like this: once you recognize the emptiness, once you realize the emptiness of the mind, then listening to the Dharma and contemplation on the Dharma, listening and reflection are not necessary. So that means before one gains realization into the ultimate nature of the mind, which is empty of inherent existence, one would need to study, one would need to hear, listen, read, and reflect, contemplate on the meaning of the teaching. So sometimes people ask questions like, when can we stop studying? When can we stop learning? So once we reach the stage of realizing the nature of the mind, which is inherently empty of inherent existence, then we can stop learning. We can stop reading. We can stop contemplating on the teachings. So until then, one has to rely upon the master. One has to rely upon the scriptures, so on and so forth. So there is a saying in the monastery. Our teachers always tell us that in the beginning you must always rely. In the beginning you must always rely or depend upon the teacher, the books, the scriptures, and yourself. And in the middle you can let go of the teacher, but you may need to rely on the text alone. You can do with the text alone, meaning you will not need any personal instructions from the teacher. You can, after a certain stage, you can read the books by yourself and understand everything. And then at the last stage, you will reach a certain stage where you will no longer need to rely upon the teacher or the book, but upon your own mind. So this is what the text is currently referring to. That once you understand once you realize the nature of the mind, then you will no longer need to rely on listening, which means the teacher, or reflection, which means reading the books. So once you realize the ultimate nature of the mind, then you will no longer need to rely upon an external teacher or an external book. The second lesson is that once you realize let me just read it through. Once you realize the uncontaminated nature of the mind, or of awareness. So once you realize the uncontaminated nature of the awareness, then you would no longer need to rely on purification of negativities. So what it means here is that first of all, awareness. Awareness is an aspect of the mind. You can pretty much say awareness is half of the mind. So mind is usually divided into, not divided, but the mind is made up of two things. One is luminosity, clarity, and the other is the awareness. So the mind itself is luminous. It is like a very clear glass, so it is luminous. At the same time, the mind is also reflective, like a mirror. So it is aware of its surroundings. If you place something in front of a mirror, then whatever is placed in the surrounding of the mirror it will be reflected upon the mirror. So similarly, whatever keeps happening around the mind, that will be within the awareness of the mind. The mind will be aware that there is something going on. So, so the mind is like a glass, a transparent glass, and a mirror at the same time. So it has the luminosity, and it also has the awareness. So awareness, awareness is like, to give an example, to an analogy would be the reflective aspect of the mirror. So the mind is able to reflect, the mind is able to be aware of, the mind is able to replicate an exact image of what is going on around in its surroundings, what is going around in its surroundings. The mind, let me just repeat it. The mind is able to replicate an image of whatever is going around. So, for example, if you see a horse running and then you close your eyes, you will still be able to, create that image in your mind. Once you see something, the image is already imprinted in your mind. Whether you can recollect the memory, the imprint, or not is something depends on your memory capability and other things. But the mind always captures. So it's like, sometimes you have cell phones when the memory is like all done. When the memory is full, you can still take pictures, but the picture will not be saved. So similarly, whatever happens around, the mind is aware of that. But whether your mind can still save the memories or not, that is another matter. Anyway, so that is the awareness, and awareness is the essentially awareness is uncontaminated. Now and then, temporarily, it is contaminated with different things, like So since awareness is half of the mind, so when the mind is contaminated with lust, greed, anger, and so many jealousy and other things, then the awareness aspect is also clouded. And when once you realize the emptiness nature of the mind, then you also realize that the mind is essentially uncontaminated. And when you realize that the mind is essentially uncontaminated, then you will no longer need to purify your negativities anymore, because the realization of the fact that the mind, awareness aspect of the mind, is essentially uncontaminated. That realization will purify all the negativities by itself. The reason is this: if you remember, in our last session, we talked about a practitioner is a trickster, a liar, a trickster being found out that he's tricking people, right? There's an example on that. So similarly, once you see that the contamination of the mind is, once you see that all phenomena are empty of inherent existence, it is that nothing is essentially out there, realistically out there, then you will also see that all this contamination is also of God, is not real. And once you realize that all the things that has been troubling you has been unreal, when you expose the very nature of all the things that has been troubling you, there is nothing, no raw aspect of the negative, afflictive emotions will be there to trouble you. And of course, what will remain is the imprint of the negativities, which you will have to purify. But the crude, the cruder aspect of the impurities will no longer be there, and it doesn't have. So no, you don't have to purify those things. But of course, you still need to cleanse the imprints of these impurities or afflictions. Yeah. Now, point number 3 and 4, we can roll into one. So it says that if you realize, if you stay on the path of the nature, this is the translation here anyways. So the Tibetan word used here is Nelma, which can be understood as the middle way, the central, the right as in right and wrong. And so something that is not extreme. Something that has that has not fallen or not falling into either extremities. So once you so this can be understood as one form of extremities can be when you are angry with someone, when you are hateful. This is one extremity. When you are too attached to someone, that is also an extremity. So So just let's stick with the 3 poisons, right? The attachment, hatred, and ignorance. So when you are in either of these 3, as long as you are falling into the pit of the 3 poisons, as long as you are sliding off into these 3 pits, then you are not in the central, you are not in the rightful place. You're not in the middle. And so this is what the text is referring to. So once you are in the middle, so this middle is not, this is little different from the middle way as spoken by the Madhyamikas, which is, the ultimate truth and other things. That is another matter. So here the middle, or the word of the term, Tibetan term nel, refers to something central, something in the middle, something in balance, something in the middle, something in central, something in the rightful position. So once your mind is in the rightful position, meaning once your mind has taught itself, trained itself to not be swayed by either of the 3 poisons or any other afflictions for that matter, then you would no longer need to accumulate merit. So there are 2 accumulations, the accumulation of the merit and accumulation of wisdom. So once you are in the rightful path, then accumulation of merit will come by itself, and the accumulation of wisdom will also follow through. So therefore, additional effort to accumulate, additional effort to make more accumulation is no longer necessary once you are in the rightful path. The rightful path can be understood as something that is abstaining from the 10 negativities and so on and so forth, 10 sinful deeds, and so on and so forth. And so this goes with the second, the third, and the fourth instruction too, which says once you are in the natural path, you will no longer need to rely on the method. So once you are in the natural path, you are into the method. You are rolled into the method. So you will no longer need to apply for or rely on an additional form of method. So, so this is the third and fourth instructions are quite similar. So I rolled into one. I rolled them into one. Okay, so number 5 is a very important point, but I don't know if I will be able to express it fully. Let me try my best. So the instruction here says that if one recognizes the nature of spiritual thought or the mind to be Dhamma Dhatu, then it is not needless or unnecessary for a practitioner to meditate upon non-conceptual thoughts. So meaning, so let me just summarize it. Once you realize that your mind itself is the Dharma Dhatu, which means the ultimate nature of the phenomena, then you will no longer need to meditate upon non-conceptual thoughts. Now, in other words, you will no longer need to meditate upon. You will no longer need to practice upon the meditation on non-duality. So conceptual thoughts is something that we conceive. And once we conceive something, then we are making it. It becomes our own creation. It is not natural. So as long as we keep making something, as long as we keep making something up with our mind, since our mind itself is contaminated, though not ultimately, our mind is contaminated, and with a contaminated mind, when you make up something, that product also becomes contaminated. So it's like you have a dirty hand and you make something with your dirty hand, then whatever you make, that also becomes dirty. So since our mind is contaminated, whatever is conjured by the mind, whatever is projected by the mind is also somewhat contaminated. That image, that thought, that sound, that voice, whatever it is also contaminated. It is also not the ultimate truth, ultimate nature of the thing, phenomena. So therefore, the best thing is to let it be. Let the mind be at its natural state. And following the previous instruction, number 4, once your mind is in the natural state, you will no longer your mind will no longer be conjuring images. No, you will no longer be creating images. You see what is reality out there. So it becomes like the reflection in a mirror. The mirror does not create an image. Whatever whatever object is out there is simply reflected by the mirror, and that's it. The mirror is not creating an image like a video camera or an artist drawing an image. The mirror is simply reflecting it. So similarly, once your mind state stays in the natural state, your mind simply is aware of things and not conjuring or creating anything. So with that in mind, let that be our foundation, and with that understanding, once you realize that the mind is the mind is the Dharma, the ultimate nature of the mind is Dharma Dhatu. If the roots of the once we recognize our mind is nothing other than the Dharma Dhatu. So this doesn't mean that we have achieved Dharma Dhatu, or that we. So this is similar to the topic of Buddha nature. We all have Buddha nature inside of us, but that doesn't mean we are Buddhas yet. So we have, what it means is we have the potential to become a Buddha. Just as freshly cut wood has the potential to become a beautiful form of carpentry, a beautiful cupboard or a beautiful table. So you can pretty much say the table is within that tree, which is uncut. But for the table to come out, we have to cut the tree and shape the tree into a table. So the table nature is within the tree. Similarly, the Buddha nature is within us, but it has to be carved by taking out all the impurities. So similarly, the mind being a Dhamma Dhatu is also like that. It doesn't mean that mind has to reach the stage of Dhamma Dhatu at the present moment, but it has. It is the Dhamma Dhatu in the sense of being empty of inherent existence, and the being empty, being devoid of inherent existence is the ultimate nature of all phenomena, and that is the Dhamma Dhatu. So therefore, the mind is Dhamma Dhatu in the sense that mind is free from inherent existence. Once you realize that, then you realize that the mind itself is free from inherent existence, and the emptiness of inherent existence is nothing other than the mind itself. So if you remember, there's a teaching in the Heart Sutra saying the form is empty and emptiness is form. So today's teaching, the instruction number 5, is exactly similar to that. Form is emptiness and emptiness form. Similarly, the mind is Dhamma Dhatu, or the mind is emptiness and emptiness is the mind. So what you have to understand, even though the literal reading of the scripture says the mind is emptiness, you have to understand that the emptiness, of course, the mind is not emptiness. Emptiness is so when the sutra says the mind is emptiness, what we have to gather from the instruction is that the mind is essentially empty of having inherent existence, and that emptiness is nothing other than the ultimate aspect or the ultimate nature of the mind, or of the form of the mind, whatever we call it. So according to the Heart Sutra, it is the form. Because Heart Sutra says form is empty, emptiness is form, right? So according to Gampopa's teaching here, it is the mind. We are referring to the mind at the moment. So let me repeat it once again, okay, just to make it clear. So the mind being empty of having inherent existence is it is the truest nature of the mind, and that is the emptiness. And that emptiness is not something external to the mind or form. So the emptiness nature of the mind is very part of the mind. It is not an external foreign aspect of the mind. So because of that, the mind is empty and emptiness is mind, was taught by the Buddha. Similarly here, once you realize that the mind is empty of having inherent existence, then you realize that the mind is the Dhamma Dhatu. And once you realize that, then there is no need to conjure, no need to create another form of meditation another form of meditation called non-conceptual meditation. Because once you realize that, your mind is already getting freed from conceptual thoughts. So you will no longer need to rely upon an additional and extra form of additional and additional form of meditation called non-conceptual meditation is no longer necessary, because your mind is already freeing itself by realizing that it is empty of having inherent existence, or in other words, that the mind is the Dhamma Dhatu. Okay, so the next is that once you realize that the afflictive emotions are rootless, then you will no longer need to rely on any antidotes, any remedial antidotes. So this means that once you realize, so this actually follows the previous instruction, which is that once you realize the mind itself is free from having inherent existence, meaning the mind is Dhamma Dhatu in the sense that it is free from having inherent existence. It is not an independently existing external phenomena. That the inherent nature, the very nature of the mind is free from inherent existence. Once you realize that, once you realize that the mind itself is Dhamma Dhatu, then you will also realize that our afflictive emotions, which is also a part of the mind. So the mind has a positive side and the negative side, and the negative side is known as the kleshas, or the afflictive emotions. And such afflictive emotions are also free from inherent existence. So, in other words, the afflictive emotions also has no firm root, not have a strong root. If something is externally out there, then of course things would be much more strongly rooted. But since all things are dependent upon each other, existing through sheer dependence upon each other, there is nothing substantially true out there. So when I say out there, I'm not talking about outside your house or in things like in matters like that, but in the terms of all phenomena are interconnected and all phenomena are interdependent, and everything exists by depending upon each other. Even a single, even a tiny thing as a grain of rice is made up of so many thousands of millions of molecules and stuff. Anyway, so the point is that all phenomena are free from inherent existence, substantially true, externally existing, independently existing phenomena. They are free from such. They are free from such a phenomena. They are free from such an aspect. They are free from such aggregates, and therefore, once you realize the mind itself is free from such elaborations, then you will also realize that the afflictive emotions, which is another part of which is an aspect of the mind. As I said before, the mind has the positive side and the negative side, and the negative side is called the afflictive emotions. So the afflictive emotions are also not strongly rooted, and so therefore the afflictive emotions can be removed easily, and there is no longer the necessity. There's no longer the necessity to look for an additional form of remedy to purify the negativities, to purify the clashes, to purify the afflictions. Okay. Then number 7 is that okay. Appearances and sounds are recognized as illusory. It is needless for a practitioner to find out any remedies with them. So I think this is a very literal translation. So appearance means images, your image, right? and sound means fame. So in other words, it's quite similar. If normally we talk about don't tarnish my image, right? Tarnishing the image. So my image is important. Image means your status in the society, so on and so forth, like that. So image and fame are also they're quite the same thing. One is one comes from the one is received by the ear and the other is received by the eye. So in other words, image. So the sound and the appearance here is actually a reference to image and fame. Okay. So once you realize that your image and your fame is your fame and your image is nothing short of it is illusory. That once you realize that your image and your fame is devoid of inherent existence, then you realize that they are illusory. And once you realize that they are illusory, then there is no longer any need to the word used here is remedy. So in Tibetan, the word used in Tibetan is gagdrup. So gag means to be defensive, and drup is, you can say, to be okay. So once you realize once you realize your image and your fame are all illusory, because it doesn't have a firm ground. It is not firmly grounded in inherent existence. It is free from it. It is empty of having inherent existence. It is not firmly grounded in inherently existent phenomena. So therefore, it is illusory. And once you realize that, then you will see that there is no necessity to be defensive or offensive about your fame and your name, your fame and your image. Then the next one is known as, if your suffering is recognized as a siddhi, then it is needless for a practitioner to look for pleasure. So what it actually means is that once you realize all the shortcomings in your life, all the negativities in your life, as part of a siddhi. Siddhi means siddhi is an attainment. is a part of an attainment. It is an attainment. So if you think of, usually attainments are gained to attain something, you have to earn, you have to work for it, right? So if you see all the negativities in your life, or all the disturbances, all the hindrances in your life, all the suffering aspect of your life as part of a siddhi or an attainment, then there is no longer the need to look for remedies outside. There is no longer the necessity to look for pleasures outside. So usually we have the suffering and pleasure, happiness and non-happiness, unhappiness. So if you are able to see all the unhappiness as part of your siddhis or your attainment, then you will no longer need to look for external and additional forms of pleasure. So so what we have to take from here is that all the it all comes down to law of karma, law of causality, basic law of causality. Whatever good things comes, we have earned it. Whatever bad thing comes, we have also earned it. So that means whatever negativities that we are having in this life, we have worked so hard to be suffering like this in this life. We deserve this, to be blunt about it. We deserve all the negativities in our life, and we deserve all the happiness in our life as well. So there is, whatever bad things comes to us, we deserve every bit of that. And whatever good thing comes in our life, we deserve every bit of that. So they are all equal. And in this regard, it means
we have accumulated a lot of negativities in the past, and therefore we are suffering in this life. So had we not be suffering, if we do not suffer in this life, all those negativities are are clubbed together. It becomes a huge debt. And the longer, as we know, with the debt, the issues with debt is that when you borrow money and the longer you hold the debt, the interest rates and everything increases. So similarly, the longer you remain not disturbed by unhappiness, all your negativities are still there until you purify all your afflictive emotions and sinful deeds and negativities. All these deeds of negativity, debt, all the debts of negativity will still be there, and the interest rate will be increasing day by day, moment by moment, and let alone the capital. You will not be able to pay the interest of your negative debts alone. So therefore, the faster suffering comes to our life, the better, because we are clearing off our debt bit by bit, because we deserve every bit of our suffering, just as we deserve every bit of our happiness. So on this note, let me just, maybe I will end here for today's teaching. If there are some questions, I will take them. So I've said this many times before. Usually when we get sick, we deserve to be sick. This is to be accepted. We deserve to be sick. Everything negative that is coming in our life, we deserve it. We deserve to be sick. At the same time, we are also endowed with friends, finances, and a lot of methods to get rid of the sicknesses. And that is the blessing. That is something we deserve as well. So when we get sick, we are getting sick. We accept that is our fate. But don't say, this is my fate, and sit there. This is all wrong. So many people do that. Like, oh, this is my fate. What should I do? So you deserve to be sick. That because of your own karma, you created this. It is your own debt. It is my own debt that I have to pay. But at the same time, I have many remedies are many remedies are at the door, available at the door for me, which I can use. And the remedies also, I deserve. And because of my good karma, I deserve all the remedies, and I should cleanse all the negativities, whatever sickness that I have. So with my impure deeds, impure debts, I have my sickness. With my positive karma, positive merits, I also get the medicine. So I must take the medicine and cure myself of the negativity, and make sure that I never get sick in the future. Okay, so there seems to be no more questions at the moment. So let me just finish up the last two instructions. So number 9 being, once you realize that your mind is unborn, then you will no longer need to rely on transference. So let me just explain this a little bit. So transference is usually known as poa in Tibetan, right? Poa literally means to transfer, that's it. And so usually we use the word transference. So that means, even though poa literally means transfer, we use the word in terms of transferring our mind from a lower state to a higher state at the time of death. At the time of death, our mind always transfers. That is for sure. There is always transference happening. There is always a poa. The mind is always transferring from the old body, the dead body, the corpse, to a new body. That's for sure. So what we do with the poa practice is usually, since we did a lot of negativities in our lifetime, we may be born, we may be most certainly born in the lower realms. So what we do with the Powa practice is try to lift ourselves from the lower realm to the upper realm, to the higher realm, through the practice of the Powa. And most of the time, we do this Powa practice to reliance on Amitabha Buddha, to reliance on Medicine Buddha, to reliance on different Vajrasattva and different Buddhas. And this is something very much necessary, very much for people like us. Reliant transference is most important, because we have no control over our mind. We have not been able to tame our mind to the point of the mind becoming our mount. Mount as in something that you will ride, like when you tame a horse or a buffalo or a yak, then you can mount on the yak, you can ride on the yak, you can ride on the horse. So we have not been able to tame our mind to the point that we are able to mount the mind and take it wherever we want to go. In such circumstances, which is a circumstance shared by all of us here, of course we have to do reliant Powa, reliant transference. By reliant transference means transference to relying upon a deity. But if you reach a certain level of understanding, certain level of realization, you can do what is something known as Powa without reliance, meaning you will no longer have to rely on Vajrasattva or any Bodhisattva or Buddhas to do Powa for you. You can do the Powa by yourself. And for that to come into fruition, you will need to realize that the mind is unborn. So what does it mean by mind being unborn? Simply put, the mind being unborn, born is to be generated, born is to be created. So unborn means uncreated, non-created, non-generated. So the mind not being generated by any external factors, but by itself and through itself, through the development and through the transmutation of the afflictive aspects of the mind. Through that, the mind will be transformed. And through the transformation of the mind, transference without reliance is also possible. So that is the meaning of once you realize the mind is unborn, then you will no longer rely on transference. That is the meaning of this instruction number 9. And number 10 is quite easy, I think. I mean, easy to speak of. That if you do everything for others, then you will no longer need to do anything for yourself, because everything that you aim for is others. So that is number 10. Anyway, so number 10 is to explain is very easy. So I will no longer elaborate on number 10, but number 9 is as I just explained. And that concludes today's teaching.
Rinpoche, we have questions now. Do you have a time today, Rinpoche? You are muted, Rinpoche.
Yes, please. You have any questions there?
We do have questions now, Rinpoche. We have two questions, 3 questions.
Okay.
I'll read the first one. Prostrate to Rinpoche. Will you please give us some idea on how a practitioner keeps the natural state of mind now and then? Thank you, Rinpoche.
Okay, so the natural state of the mind. So the natural state of the mind, the very nature of the mind is usually in many of the scriptures, the mind is likened to a lake usually. So when the lake is calm, the calm aspect of the lake is also likened to the calm aspect of the mind, and so on and so forth. So usually by itself, the lake is clean. The very nature of the lake is clean, and also by itself, the lake is calm too. But when there's a strong current, strong wind, then the lake is, there are ripples in the lake. There are ripples in the lake, and the lake is disturbed. And once the lake is disturbed, all the mud in the bottom of the lake also comes up, and the lake becomes dusty, or the lake becomes muddled. So the lake is a very good analogy, example for the mind, something, because the mind is, even though mind sees everything, we cannot see mind. So we need something tangible to liken with mind, so that we can have an idea of what a mind looks like. So that is usually in the sutras, usually the in the scriptures, usually the analogy of the lake is provided. So how to keep the mind in its natural state? So just like the analogy given, the mind should be kept in its natural state by not letting it be disturbed by external currents. So it is more easier said than done, of course. And since we cannot be, our mind will not remain undisturbed 24/7 for too long, because we are still beginner, we are still learning, we are still learning how to walk in the meditative sphere. So therefore, keeping our mind in the natural state, so the solution to keep our mind in its natural state is to give a certain, that is the reason why we have the meditation anyways. So during our meditation, we make sure that we start. Meditation is all about consolidating all the different aspects of our mind into one form. So once you are able to consolidate all the different mental factors, once you are able to consolidate all the different mental factors in one form, then the mind, for that period of time, during that period of meditation, the mind becomes one. And that oneness, when you are in that state of oneness, your mind is in its natural state. Because it is in its natural state, because it is in the calm state. So therefore, contemplative exercises, or in other words, meditation upon contemplative meditation, meditating upon a single pointed meditation, that kind of things is very important. That kind of things is very helpful, because, let me repeat again, because that will help us to consolidate all aspects of our mind. When we consolidate all aspects of our mind into one, then our mind becomes calm. When the lake is by itself, when the lake is one, there is no ripple. When a current comes, when a strong wind comes, it breaks the lake. It breaks through the lake, and the lake and creates ripple in the lake, and the lake is disturbed. So similarly, we have to consolidate all aspects of our mind into one. And the best method, of course, here is to do meditation. And there are many forms of meditation: mindfulness meditation, single-pointed meditation, meditation upon compassion, so on and so forth. For this matter, meditation upon single-pointed single-pointed meditation. Single-pointed meditation is very helpful in this case to bring the mind to its natural state. Because when you are meditating on emptiness, or when you are meditating on, let's say, compassion, your mind again is not in its natural state. So mind not being in its natural state is not a bad thing altogether. When your mind is, when you are meditating on compassion, you feel pity. You feel so much compassion towards people suffering. You start crying. Your mind is again disturbed. Your mind is perturbed, I might say, maybe not disturbed. So your mind is perturbed, and that so the difference between disturbances brought through suffering in your own life through selfish reason, like, okay, I'm not getting this thing done, I'm not getting enough this and that, and oh, so many people are suffering, how can I help those people? So there's a slight difference. One will bring strength to you when you see people suffering, and when you see people suffering, when you see other people suffering, and when you meditate through compassion, it brings strength to you. When you see yourself suffering, usually you sulk, you go all inward. Your head keeps lowering and lowering, and all you can see is the space in front of you. You can no longer see the big picture. When you start suffering, when you become selfish, when the trajectory is pointed inwards and you suffer, that is different. When the trajectory, when the camera, let's say the spiritual camera, is faced outward to other sentient beings, and you see the suffering, then you get more and more strength to do something for them. When it's turned inwards, you become more and more sorrowful. You lose hope, you lose confidence, and so on and so forth. So yes, being in the natural state of mind is not always pleasant, and because you are doing something right doesn't mean your mind has to stay in its natural state. When you are meditating on compassion, your mind is not in its natural state, but is still a rightful thing to do.
The second question, Rinpoche. Dear Rinpoche, accumulating good merits besides giving good karmas, can these good merits cancel out those bad karmas unknowingly made in previous lives? Thank you, Rinpoche. You are muted, Rinpoche.
Yeah, so the account book of the karma, of course, karma is not a person, and karma is not, karma is universal. Karma is universal, and karma, each of us has our own individual karma to repay or to accumulate. And that being said, the account books of the karma is very accurate, very detailed, and so therefore the expenditures and the incomes are very finely detailed. So my point here is that whatever positive, however much positive karma you have accumulated, if you do not, it doesn't matter how much income you make, if you do not pay your taxes, then you will be fined. So therefore, no matter how much positivity you accumulate, if you do not purify your negativities, it will still be there. You have to pay it off. You have to cleanse it. That being said, the more, just like if you have surplus of income, then you can always pay with comfort. If you have surplus of income, you can pay back with comfort. You don't have to worry because you have lots of income. So similarly, if you have accumulated huge amount of merit, then you are much more enabled, you are much more empowered to purify your negativities. So you'll be able to purify your negativities much stronger, much wisely, and much fiercely, you might say.
We have one more question. The last one is, Rinpoche, could you please explain instruction number 4 one more time?
Okay. So So instruction number 4, I think we went over it a little bit. Anyway, so it's the natural set of cultivating the natural set of mind, right? And I think I explained this. I already explained it, though. Okay, I don't know. What is there any specific questions regarding that, or like I explained how to remain, how to regain, or how to maintain in the natural set of mind, and that the method is through contemplative meditation or single-pointed meditation. That is the key. By practicing single-pointed meditation, you'll be able to enhance your capability, your ability to stay in the natural state of the mind. That's and I made a very lengthy explanation for that. Is there a specific question regarding that?
No, I'm not sure.
That is it. Okay, so that's it. I think I already explained it in a very lengthy sort of like way. So I don't think it's required anymore.
Okay, thank you, Rinpoche. I think those are all questions. We don't have any more questions.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Ms. Yan. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. Where's the slide for the dedication, please?
Zembe Benga Shin Namang Do Yu Gren La Changchu Be Lobsang Chuye Jamse Chukun Do Jenge Choden Tambara Shaw